What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so um, make no mistake about it. Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce are two of the top 70, no, even more than that actually. Two of the top 50 greatest players in the history of the NBA. And I would put Garnett top 25-ish. All right. I think Pierce is top 40 to 45, somewhere in that range. They did win a championship in 2008 with the Boston Celtics. And while I do think championships enhances a player's legacy, I don't think championships are the be-all, end-all when it comes to being in the Hall of Fame, obviously. But Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce think otherwise. And I think this is going to be very controversial to a lot of people. But they think that winning a championship is a prerequisite to being in the Hall of Fame, meaning a requirement. Meaning that if you haven't won a championship, you shouldn't be voted into the Hall of Fame. So this is what, I'll put a link to this article in the pinned comment in the comment section below. But this is what Kevin Garnett had to recently say. Of course, Kevin Garnett is a recent inductee into the Hall of Fame. Kevin Garnett said, been in the Hall of Fame and then being here with a championship is solidified. That's 360 to me. Not to say or disown anybody else in here, but I feel they go together. These are arguably the best players to ever touch the rock, and to be in here to be considered one of them with the championship is icing on the cake. And this is what Paul Pierce said in his even stronger language. I'm not even sure I want to be in the Hall of Fame without one of these. We're talking about the best of the best in accomplishment, the highest accomplishment you can accomplish as a team. Lord, you love that word accomplishment, don't you? Like, I feel that this should be the entry. You can't come here without one of these. That's just my opinion. All right, they're entitled to their opinion, but let's put some facts out there. If it wasn't for that stroke of brilliant maneuvering that Danny Ainge made in that offseason in 07, more than likely, Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett would have finished their careers without a championship. Let's not forget that as great as Paul Pierce was as an individual player, putting up 23 to 26 points a game every night for year on and year out with the Boston Celtics, he wasn't leading his team year in and year out to the playoffs. That just didn't happen. Let's be honest about that. More often than not, Boston was sort of in the bottom of the rankings. Think about this. The best teams in the late 90s until the mid-2000s in the Eastern Conference were teams like the Miami Heat, the Sixers, the Knicks, the Pistons obviously had their heyday. And I feel like I'm forgetting a team. The Pacers and the Nets. Boston wasn't really in the mix. They had that one run, I think in 2002 with Walker and Pierce, but they weren't doing any damn thing. And Garnett was even worse. He did have that year, the MVP year in 04, but for the most part, the Timberwolves were not a really good team. He was putting up great numbers, great, stats. 24 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 blocks, 2 steals, but they weren't winning. So if it wasn't for that move, these guys may have never won a championship unless it would have been done as later on in their careers as lesser players. So these guys talk a lot of crap for a team that won one championship when they could have potentially three-peated. And even in the year they won a championship, this is the same team that Almost lost in the first round to the Atlanta Hawks. Atlanta Hawks. Joe Johnson's Atlanta Hawks. Then they almost lost in the second round to the Cavaliers. Paul Pierce scored 41 in that game. Saved them. Then in the conference finals, they played an aging Pistons team and beat them in 6. And then in the finals, they beat a Laker team that didn't have Andrew Bynum. So, I mean, you know, at the end of the day, you guys weren't this juggernaut. And I've never seen a team try to milk a championship so much. I mean, if the 2008 championship trophy was a D-cup titty, it's down to an A-cup. So, you know, at the end of the day, man, come on, man. Look, at the end of the day, championships matter. But you're trying to tell me that Charles Barkley and Karl Malone and John Stockton and Reggie Miller, Adrian Dantley, Alex English, Dominique Wilkins, you know, who else? Pete Maravich. I mean, so many different players. They aren't Hall of Famers because they didn't win a championship? Allen Iverson is not a Hall of Famer? Because he was never in a position where he was lucky to have a super team around him? Come on now. I just don't agree with that at all. Some players just unfortunately lost to the better team. And hell, even with that, a guy like Wilt Chamberlain, who I think is the GOAT, and yeah, I know I called Michael Jordan the GOAT yesterday out of respect, and that's the title that people give him, but I still think Wilt's the GOAT. So shut the fuck up with that. But anyway, Wilt got 2 championships and people, you know, get on him about that. But tell me somebody else from that era that played from the late 50s to early 70s that has more than 2 championships. Tell me. Outside of Boston. And I'll shut the hell up. Tell me somebody else in that era, since everybody wanted to chide Wilt for only winning 2 championships, how many people have more than 2 championships, if they got a championship at all, who played alongside the Bill Russell era? I'll wait. But anyway, I don't agree with Paul Pierce, and I don't agree with Kevin Garnett at all. I don't think championships are a prerequisite. And this is part of what's the problem now going on in the culture today. Now, and to be honest with you, I sort of blame people like Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless for starting this. This is why a guy like Draymond Green is more than likely going to be in the Hall of Fame. But a guy like Michael Cooper, who to me has a better resume, was not in the Hall of Fame because even though he has 5 championships, we recognize that he was a role player. But now it's more about rings. People have more respect for Steve Kerr as a player than they do Russell Westbrook. They have more respect for Draymond Green as a player than they do, some people, Jason Kidd. But anyway, you know Jason Kidd did win a championship as a role player, but you get what I'm going with that. But still, tell me what you guys think.